Hey everyone, it's Justine and welcome to a new video tutorial today. I have an exciting collaboration today with Simon Hurley, who just came out with his fantastic new release of stamps, stencils, and dye inks. And I'm going to be using his products today to create a card. Now, Simon and I were talking about collaborating together, and we decided it would be fun to give each other a 10-minute challenge to see who can come up with a card in 10 minutes and what we can come up with. So I have his video linked below in the video description. You're going to want to check him out. He's absolutely an amazing artist, designer, card designer, and has amazing hacks on his channel that just are life-changing for card making. So be sure to check him out, like, subscribe, and comment on both of our videos. If you would like to see Simon's entire release, I've saved that to the very end of the video if you'd like to see what he's come up with. All right, let's get started. I'm going to be using several of Simon's inks. So he came out with some new dye ink pads with Ranger, and they have some really pretty basic colors, and I'm going to be using a bunch of the different colors here. This one here is Slippery When Wet, and it's a very standard yellow color, and I'm going to just be adding a few dabs here and there on the cardstock. This is not the first time in my life I've done a galaxy background technique or a Northern Lights technique, but I do quite enjoy it. I'm going to go on with some rosy cheeks now, and I'm going to be using that blending tool. What's really nice about this technique and what I love about it is that you don't really have to worry too much about being perfect because you're going to cover the whole thing with black ink anyway, so if you get any harsh lines, it doesn't particularly matter, which is why I'm not being overly cautious as to how I put this down on the paper. Now, as I'm blending, I'm going to speed you up as I go along, and I'll let you know the colors that I'm using along the way. Now, Simon's ink pads here are a standard felt pad with a dye ink, very similar to most inks that are out there on the market at the moment. I love the colors that he's decided to come out with. This one here is Traffic Cone, and I just love all the creative names for them. I'm going in now with some Lator Gator, and I'm slowly starting to really blend in those white areas so that there's less and less white as we're going along. Now I'm going in with some Triple Berry, which is some purple, and I'm filling in the last little bits of those white areas. And then I thought I'd go in with a little bit of blue as well, and this is the Remember Me blue, just to fill in any last areas. Now, what I do love about Simon's line is that it does not include a black ink. I need another black ink like I need a hole in the head, and I like the fact that it didn't come with one, so I get 12 colors that are unique to my collection and that I'm going to love. So I did need a black ink though for this technique, so I went and grabbed my Distress Oxide ink, and I'm just going over it now with my blending tool, and I'm using a circular motion, starting off my paper, working my way on, doing a circular motion, no pressure on my hand really, and I'm just going along and blending over top of those colors. And it's really up to you how much black ink you want to add. The more you add, the less of those colors are going to shine through, but that may be a good thing depending on if there's any areas you really want to cover up. I am using the tonic glass mat here to blend on, which I really love because it's a nice slippery surface for me to really blend my tool. And I totally find that my blending has improved since using this mat. I just find just that smoothness, or that smooth area, to blend on just really works well. So I'm all done my background, I'm ready to go, and I thought about how I'm going to use my stars. So I decided to go ahead and stamp down an area because I needed to know where am I going to put my stars on my background. Now, this stamp here that I'm going to be using from Simon is a new stamp of his that he designed himself. And by the way, if you wanted to see the entire line of his products, I am going to show them off at the end of the video today. So I decided to stamp those down. You can stamp them down as any color as long as you can see them, but the important thing is that you keep your stamp in your MISTI or your stamp positioner. So keep that in there, don't peel it off because you need to stamp in the same spot again later. This is just here so I know where to lay my stencil down, where to add gel to my stencil, etc. So I'm grabbing a piece of purple tape here. I tore it in half. I'm sticking it down onto the card, and I'm sticking the sticky side face up so that I can stick the stencil right on top and it's attached to my card already. I love this star stencil from Simon because I think it's a little bit different than your standard star stencil. It has these lines in between that remind me of a shooting star, and I love the variety of sizes that you get, and so it's just a little bit different, and I'm excited to add this one to my collection. I'm going to be going over my design here with transfer gel from Thermoweb, and because I want to foil this. But before I do that, I'm going to add a couple more pieces of purple tape so I know where to stop where my astronaut helmet is. Now I'm just going to spread on the gel just in an even thin layer. The thinner you get, the faster it dries. However, the thinner you get, the more of a chance there is in a way that you're going to miss an area. So I always say about the thickness of the stencil is perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a spread over now. And there's no need for me to stencil or put any of the gel on the stencil itself, so I kind of go back and forth and take off any excess and put it back in my jar before I lift it up. The best thing about this gel is that it will dry clear, so you'll know when it's all ready. And it cleans up nicely with just a baby wipe or paper towel. I'm now going to go in and just add a couple of the stars here over on the side so it doesn't look so random. And I just wanted to add those in a little bit behind and underneath the helmet itself. The helmet here reminded me of that movie Wonder. I don't know if anybody's seen it yet, but it's so fantastic, and it reminded me of him always hiding his face, so I decided to actually have a faceless astronaut helmet in this one. You're going to see how some of these thinner ones are starting to dry. This is about 5 minutes after I added the gel, and the Thermoweb recommends leaving it for an hour. I left it for about 20 minutes, and it was pretty much dry at this point. If you are worried at all, just come back later, and you can foil this the next day or a couple hours later. It's no big deal. I'm going to be using a sequin sort of foil. This is silver foil, but it has stars in it, so I thought that would be kind of cool to add on top of the stars. And since the stars are so quite big, you're going to see that detail on them. I'm running these through my MINC machine here, and as you know if you've watched me foil before, I used to always use a laminator, which I'll link to below in the video description. It's a much more affordable option, but I ended up doing a bit of an upgrade to my laminator, and I ended up bringing my old one to school and investing in a MINC. So you can see those details there in the close-up image, and now I'm going to go ahead and get ready to emboss this. Now, the reason why I didn't emboss it before I actually did the foiling is because I wasn't sure how my embossing powder would actually react in the laminator. When you think about the fact that you're going to heat it, you don't want it to get too flat. I find when I add my heat gun too long, it gets a little bit flat. So I wanted to make sure that wasn't going to happen. So I went and stamped in my MISTI once again using some Versamark ink, and then I went ahead and grabbed my embossing powder spoon here, and I just added the embossing powder over top of my image, flicked the back to get rid of any excess embossing powder, and I was able to heat it. You may want to as well just to double check that your background is dry at this point by just adding a small amount of embossing powder on it and seeing if it sticks to any of the wrong areas. If it's sticking to areas you don't want, then you're definitely going to want to wait for it to dry some more or use an embossing bag. So now that that's all finished, I'm going to grab my heat tool, heat it up here, and then heat emboss my image. Now, as I mentioned, this did remind me of the movie Wonder. Let me know in the video description below if you've seen it. I really absolutely love it. And I even created my Anti-Bullying Day t-shirt for my school as the Wonder theme, so I thought that was kind of cool. Anyway, I'm grabbing some glossy accents, and my bottle's actually broken because I accidentally used a paper piercing tool to try and unclog it. But hey, I haven't used it in quite a long time, so I get why it would have clogged. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use a paintbrush here to spread it on the inside of his helmet. So I am going to add quite a bit because I do want it to be a very glossy look and very shiny look. This is, of course, going to take a little while to dry though, but Simon never specified if the 10 minutes included drying time, so I'm cheating. Whatever. I can't wait to see what he creates anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and just finish up that paintbrushing here, and then I should be good to go. Okay, so I'm just holding it up to the light so you can see the shine on it, and then I have a photo here and a close-up of the final card in which you see how shiny it really is when it's all finished and dry. Mine does have a couple of bumps in it because I accidentally put something on top of it while it was drying, but hey, it is what it is. I'm seriously going to have to make a bloopers video one day of me just cursing away as my mistakes happen. So you can see I did put something on top. I have this little scuff here on my design, but hey, I have put a lot of work into this card, so I'm going to do some card surgery. And it's going to be simple card surgery such as just simply putting my sentiment over top. So I stamped the It's Been Light Years, and I'm going to be die cutting this using a speech bubble die, which I thought would be super cute since it's going to sound like it's coming from the helmet, if that makes sense. When I mean say sound, of course, I mean it's going to look like that. I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine here, and then I'm going to be placing it on top of my card, right over top of that little boo-boo that I made there, and so that it's all okay in the end, and the card looks like there was never anything wrong with it. So I'm going to add this using a couple of pieces of foam tape. But in the meantime, I wanted to get my card base all nice and folded, so it measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 when folded, and I scored that there using my bone folder. And I'm going to be actually finishing the inside of the card today, which is something that I don't do too often. So I'm just going ahead and adding some glue to the back of my card and then placing it onto the front. My cards always have a white border around them. It's just what I prefer and what I like. And so if you prefer a black border or maybe somewhat pick up one of those colors that you see in the galaxy, then that's cool too. But I think the white border brings out that silver quite a bit and brings out that helmet. I think by choosing a white border, it allows you to choose which elements you want to stand out. Whereas if I chose a black border, I think the background would stand out more. And probably the silver as well. So now that that's adhered down, I did want to go ahead and add a sentiment to the inside, and that is going to be a very simple let's catch up. So I like how the sentiment kind of matches from the front to the back. And I am finally going to go ahead and attach that front sentiment now that I'm all finished stamping the inside, as well as the back of my card with my own personalized little trademark there. So I kind of fiddled around as to where I kind of wanted it. I knew I wanted to cover up that spot, but I wasn't quite sure where I wanted the sentiment to be. This is a bit of an odd spot for me. I don't put it very often to the left in the middle, but I do like the way that it turned out regardless. And that's the end of today's card. I hope you enjoyed it. And be sure to go off to Simon Hurley's video. I have the link below in the video description. He has created a really fun card for you today as well, also taking only 10 minutes to complete his card, and he probably didn't cheat because he's such a good person and a sweetheart. So thank you so much, Simon, for collaborating with me today and also entrusting me to show off some of your lovely stamping supplies here. Here is a look at his entire line and all of the inks. I'm just taking them slowly one off of the other so you can see the titles, see all the colors that are available. I think the choices of having a couple of blues and a couple of greens as a double color are some really great ideas, and these are some fabulous felt dye ink pads. So they're perfect. You could do things like ink blending with them. You can do things like watercolor if you inked them off onto the glass mat, picked it up with some water. Simple stamping, of course, works just fine, and these are some really great ink pads. So I am going to go ahead and show off the rest of the line. There's just a few other items, some stencils as well as some stamps. This is his first stamp called Trampoline Friends, and it has this fun trampoline with all these cool little critters, a tree, perfect for scene stamps, as well as some really great sentiments. This one here is a must-have plaid cling rubber background stamp. I love plaid stamps. I can never get enough of them. This one is more of a floral design, which is very pretty. It's a bit whimsical looking, a little bit not really realistic. It's more of a cartoony sort of look, if that makes sense. And this one here is Space Training, which is the one I used today that has some really fun big letters that you can mix and match. This stencil, super gorgeous. This one here, of course, is a bit of a layering stencil where you can layer your flowers and your leaves and everything that you need, and it coordinates quite well with that cling background. And then there is the raindrop stencil as well as the final one that I used today, this star one. So thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you soon for another video. Bye now.